Should an author self-publish? An analysis of the process of self-publishing by Kenny Jackson. If you are a new author, you have probably asked yourself the question, how do I get my novel published? The answer may be different than you think. Today, traditionally published authors are barely earning 40% of all Kindle ebook royalties paid, while self-published indie authors and those published by Amazon's imprints are taking home almost 60%. So, the question is, what is self-publishing? The 20th century publishing industry was dominated by large publishing companies. As the last century came to a close, the improvement in technology, the advent of social media, and the readily available resources regarding writing and publishing changed this paradigm. A new method of publication came to the forefront: self-publishing. Self-publishing is the act of an author publishing material independently and using their own resources to do so. The purpose of this presentation is to give new authors information about the act of self-publishing and answer the question, should an author self-publish? Because self-publishing is a high-risk, high-reward proposition, it is imperative that an author has enough information to make this decision. After conducting my research, I conclude that self-publishing is a viable option for authors. For this presentation, I first gathered electronic and then print sources that helped me evaluate the proposition of self-publishing. Then I interviewed author and podcaster A.C. Fuller to get a first-hand account of the publishing industry. Using the results from my research, I will relay the benefits, followed by the drawbacks of self-publishing. Next, I will discuss my findings. Last, I will give my recommendations to authors as a result of my research. The first advantage to self-publishing is the growing market. Since the advent of the ebook, the self-publishing market has climbed steadily. As of 2015, independently published books have now overtaken the traditionally published book in the ebook marketplace. Take Amazon, for instance, the largest distributor of ebooks in the world. As you can see in Figure 1, 38% of the bestsellers in the Amazon Kindle store are independently published. Compare that to 26% of ebooks being published by the Big Five traditional publishing companies, and the current market begins to take shape. The second benefit to self-publishing, and possibly the greatest, is the autonomy an author has when doing so. When being published by a traditional publishing company, the author has little to no say in the editing, design, or marketing of the book. For this reason alone, self-publication has merit. As Dan Pointer points out, self-publishing is where the author bypasses all the intermediaries, deals directly with the editor, cover artist, book designer, and printer, and then handles the distribution and promotion. The last and most tangible benefit of self-publishing is a percentage of royalties paid. The traditional publishing company has had a long history of taking most of the profits of book sales. Shown in Figure 2 is the percentage of royalties paid by these traditional publishing companies, on average. The ebook statistic is especially relevant to this current conversation. A traditional publishing company pays 25% royalties to an author per sale of each book. This means that for every book sold, the publishing company takes 75% of the profit. Compare that with the royalties paid to a self-published author. Figure 3 details the royalties paid by the major ebook distributors in the U.S. Most of these companies pay a percent based on the cost of the book, but all of them pay a much higher percent than the traditional publishing companies. Most royalties paid by these distributors are anywhere between 40 and 70%. The first drawback to self-publishing is the financial cost. Figure 4 shows the average cost to self-publish an ebook, a paperback, and a hardcover book. The greatest cost in self-publishing is editing by a large amount. This figure can vary depending on the quality of the work. For an author taking on the financial costs themselves, this can be prohibitive. The second drawback to self-publishing is the temporal cost. The time spent self-publishing also varies greatly, depending on the amount of work done by the author. I interviewed author and podcaster A.C. Fuller, and he detailed some of the trials of publishing when he said, "I probably spent an average of 6 hours a day for 6 months working on launching the book." There are 3 major takeaways when discussing self-publishing. The first is that there is large financial and temporal costs attributed to the author. The author, if determined to be successful, will spend both money and time on the project. Second, there is a growing market for self-published books, making the venture not only feasible, but more and more possible. Last, an author who self-publishes stands to make a larger percentage of the profits. If an author can market their book well, gaining a large audience, they can make a large amount of money. In conclusion, I would like to make a few recommendations to authors seeking to publish their books. First, it must be noted that self-publishing is a large risk financially. If an author is risk-averse, then self-publishing is probably not the best option for them. Self-publishing is the best option for those authors who have great faith in themselves, a tireless work ethic, and a fearless attitude. These qualities will lead to a successful self-published author because the onus falls to them to do the work. If they are willing to put in the time, money, and effort, an author can not only publish their book, but also make a living doing it. Thank you for your interest in my presentation.